This is a Changed Physician, episode 206. Welcome back to the Changed Physician. I am Melissa Cady, the Challenge Doctor, with my co-host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro, here to bring you another episode of the Changed Physician. And this would be our episode, I said 206, right? So
I think you did, right? It is 206.
Yeah. How are you today?
I'm tired, man. I'm like, so for those of you who've been listening for a long time, I have this like kettlebell challenge thing. I literally do 2 exercises. I do them pretty consistently, about 5 days a week. I've been doing it for over a year now because my goal is I turned 50 in 10 months.
10 months.
Maybe 9 months. Actually, it might be closer to 9 months now. And my goal was I want to get to the top kettlebell of this program, which is it's a 48 kilogram kettlebell, which is 105 pounds, to do these 2 exercises in. So I was at 32 kilos and I was at 40 kilos. And I'm literally stressing about this so bad that I think I pushed myself too hard like a couple of weeks ago. So, and I have I'm going to be off for a couple of weeks with travel. And so I had to back off. Needless to say, it's one of those things where you're pushing yourself. Yeah, I had to back off on the weight, but then in the back of the mind, I'm like, okay, I can't totally back off the workout. So I'm shortening the interval between these sets and increasing the reps per set. And I'm just tired. Like today was tiring.
Your body's tired. Just like, what are you doing, Kevin? Too fast.
It is. Yeah. I mean, this is not the subject. I didn't want to talk about this for the episode, but it makes me think about a lot of different things, like how your body heals as you get older. And the thing I'm wrestling with is the difference between, say, muscular recovery and ligamentous recovery. Because when you're lifting heavy weights, you have to take this in consideration that your muscle may actually hypertrophy and gain strength prior to your ligaments and your tendons actually being able to support those.
Right.
And if you're impatient like me, that causes problems, right? So yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, you were a personal trainer, right? So
yeah.
How would you counsel? I'm totally pivoting here, but how would you counsel?
I think this is what we should do our episode about anyway.
Yeah, I mean, but how would you counsel your trainees, I guess, your clients or whatever? Did you have like a different rule set per age? Like, did you look at the age? Because my suspicion, and based on like physiology, is that kids, they have faster recovery time. So you can actually probably help them to progress a little bit quicker, depending on the age, not too young, as compared to, say, someone who is over the age of 35, when things start to really change physically for them. So what did you use to recommend when it came to training?
Yeah, I never quoted anything from I learned things in my training, but I really, there's like this continuum or change, I should say, that it's funny you said this because I just counseled someone who's a neighbor yesterday. And there's I even told this neighbor, I'm like, I'm so fascinated by the human body, but there has to be a dual appreciation when you want change, to realize that there's, like you said, you can change your reps, you can change your weight, and I never had like a set amount of like, this is what this person at this age should do or anything like that. But it's more about you're trying to and help the person create an awareness of what the sensations are feeling. And just because, and we've talked about this before, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do that something because you may have a price to pay that's a little bit too dear. But with youngers, the resilience factor is, I feel like, as we get older, I don't like it when someone says, oh, you shouldn't be running, you're like almost 50 years old. Like, no. It's a different strategy. It's all about the strategy. So you have to just start with one change at a time is like a lot easier, and seeing the response. If your body has a little fatigue or a little soreness, but it's not keeping you from like sitting on the toilet because it's too intense. So I always have people create an awareness, understand how they can change certain factors, see how your body responds to those factors, and then you can keep progressing depending on how intense that response is. So the adaptive components, and it's not just like ligament, muscle, like there's these fascial components, like all these sensory inputs that come from different things. And there's a certain tolerance for your body type at certain age with your certain medical conditions, whatever it might be. Like you're always tweaking, you're always having to tweak stuff. And then you find out sometimes the hard way that was a little bit too much of a modification.
Well, and that's what I'm kind of interesting is the transitions. Right. So I've been working out consistently for like years now, like really consistent. And then I was prior to this particular program that I've been doing, I'd vary things up, and it was interesting because you start a new program, then you get super sore. I've never been, it was weird how sore I get, but I don't get sore. I haven't been sore for like long time. Like it's like once I start the program, and as long as I maintain it, or even if I just miss a couple of days, I don't get sore like I did before, like when I changed the program.
Right.
But this, it's really specifically to me about weight training, because that's when I'm using these weights. And I'm really finding transitions between when I'm stepping up to be significantly more challenging, because the timing is hard. Like the timing is really, really hard because, as I said, I'm impatient. And so it feels like I can do it. But then what I kind of is like, I introduced and everything's feeling good. And then let's say, so the program has like 10 sets. So it's 10 sets of swings. And then 10 sets.
You go fast or slow or?
Well, kettlebell swings are explosive movements. So
yeah. So those things you have to be more careful about increasing too fast, too much.
Yeah. So because there's two sets. There's the kettlebell swings, which is an explosive type of exercise. There's 100 swings that are divided in generally sets of 10. And then you're doing them predominantly either one-handed, intermittently with like another day, you'll do them two-handed, because there's a reason that, the physiology is a little bit different, I guess, because like one-handed is more tension, and you're kind of trying to keep your body straight while you can generate more force with a two-handed swing. And then the other one is the Turkish get up, which I think I've mentioned before, which is where you're basically lying on the ground, and then you're bringing there's a step of movement that you're bringing to basically get to a standing position. And it's like kind of like, I call it the Hamilton pose, where, how like Hamilton are sticking with the arm straight up in the air thing. So you end up in Hamilton, and then you have to get back down. So it's very slow, constantly under tension.
Yes.
But it's just really fascinating to me, because I can introduce a step up, and those have either been 4 kilograms, and then this last one I've been trying to do 8 kilograms because I just don't want to buy any more bells. And but it's the time, man. It just seems like you do it, and it seems like you're doing good. You're like, well, like your body's doing good, and then all of a sudden you just plateau. Or I just start getting really, really tired. And then I don't know whether it's me being, then it's a mental game. Am I just getting lazy because I don't want to do this? And so I'm pretending to be tired that I don't want to do it, or I'm actually physically tired. So that's what I'm trying to find, is like, what is what is a good stepwise, if you're changing a weight, would you generally like stay with that weight for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks? Like that, that's the thing. Cause I think if I had more of a, the book I use basically describes it as you have to own the weight. And that's like owning the weight means you can just rip through these sets. And I'm like, that's like a year for Bell. I feel like it's like that. You're never gonna, and I need to know that I'm advancing in order to keep going. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of things in training when I was a personal trainer about like working through plateaus and even in my own personal life, I think there's a difference in how we approach our workouts. I don't tend to do the same thing and progress it and be focused on one activity. My approach has been quite varied, always changing things up. Now I might have certain staples that I do, but when it becomes easy or it becomes easier, and I feel like I can handle the load change is going to be a small percentage change. It's not, and like you say, if you take a few days off, I will back off to like almost little weight for the first set and do like, 10, like 15 repetitions. Like say, have you ever heard of, for those listening, there's a Hex Bar. Do you know what the Hex Bar is?
It looks like a hex. Hexagram,
so
right?
You stand in the middle of it,
yeah.
and it has handles,
yeah.
so that you don't have to like do this grabbing a bar. Like when I do squat, if I want to squat, I want to feel like I have weight in front and on the back of me.
Yeah.
So the distribution of the weight. So I use that, and I'll put no weight on it. Like hadn't done it for 2 years with the pandemic. So I went in.
So what is the weight of because like a typical like Olympic barbell is like what, 45 pounds or something for the weight?
It's probably in the 40-ish, 30 to 40. It's not too heavy, but I made myself just go through repetitions, even though it felt super easy.
Yeah.
Because my ligaments, my fascia, my muscles, every component of my body was not used to that movement. And so there's a science and a philosophy that I have when it comes to that. So in general, adaptive progression. And so that was done for the first day. I didn't add weight. A couple days later, I added 5 pounds or 10 pounds on each side, which seemed like nothing. The people in the gym are probably like, what the heck is this woman doing? It barely has any weight on there. But I've been only going in 10 to, basically 10 pound increments. So, my whole point saying this is that you have to start where you're at and be honest where you're at. And as things get easier, then you can test it. But I suggest testing with small amounts. But the thing that people don't think about, like when you use your kettlebells, like if you've been doing the whole thing all the time with both arms, both hands holding onto it and swinging it, and you got to a point where you can go a little faster and those movements don't bother you. If you were to switch to a single arm, like you have to, even if you went in half with the weight and just did one arm, the problem is there's directional forces, the weight, the speed, all of those things are playing into all the tissues and how, basically the stress that they're under. And so you have to always be, you don't know this sometimes until you've been injured. I don't know if you've had this experience, Kevin, but there are so many little like nuances that it forces you to be aware of, like the things that can make it harder and easier or overstrain things, where basically your body's mad at you for doing that too fast, too hard, or too heavy.
Yeah.
Or a different direction.
But that's why I would say, that's why I love kettlebells. Like I've done, I just love them. Like, and that's why I'm consistently doing, because I have this, it's having a weight goal allows me to progress with what the biggest criticism of this particular program, which is called Simple and Sinister, is that people get bored because it is quite literally 2 exercises, but the 2 exercises combine basically whole body strength, because you got the explosion that's associated with a swing, and then you got this constant time under tension that's associated with a get up. And because you're alternating between a single arm, like you're doing 10 sets with single arm, so 5 per arm, and then the next day you're doing 10 sets with 2 arm swings, it really provides a nice dynamic. It's just coming back to that point, is it's these stupid ligaments and tendons and things. And I've been really like, I haven't had an injury in the typical sense. I would say a week ago, that would be probably the closest I've ever had, because I bogged out right in the middle of a set with the super heavy bell. And after that, I was like, ooh, like the next day I tried a lighter weight, and I probably did it too aggressively because I was too angry. And my neck's tight. So my neck has been tight. My neck and upper shoulders have been really, really tight. So some people would probably call that it probably telling something, but I'm trying to, just work through it. It's just trying to figure out those, the stupid little ligaments. Cause I have been very patient with progression, but with these heavier weights, what I'm finding is the transition times I'm really having a hard time figuring out how much it is. Is it me being, my brain wanting to be lazy, AKA like, this is hard. I really don't want to do it. So let me just try to figure out a bunch of excuses to tell my human not to do this, versus how much of it actually is, you're really pushing us too hard. We need to back off, you know?
Yeah. And it could be the amount of time between the workouts after you've exerted a little bit more, like, and I think, you know, there's a lot of factors, you know, too, obviously your sleep, your nutrition, your general immune system state, like all those things can impact that feeling. You got to be all inclusive there, but there is a component, if you're doing this daily and you've increased it and you're not giving yourself as much time for the recovery, that might be your body being like, I'm not fully recovered from that last workout. That's my.
And that brings up another kind of interesting thing, because I'm like, okay, humans are remarkably adaptable. And some people have, like, if you kind of imagine we were out hunter gathering or whatever and walking for 20 miles a day, chasing down the gazelles or whatever. So it's like, well, then you got to figure out, am I not resting enough because I'm lazy, versus I'm not resting enough because my body actually requires this rest? Because I do think I think there's it's really kind of tricky. Like it's like trying to figure out like rest periods I overthink everything, but I'm just like, man, it's like, it's so hard to rest.
Maybe your brain's saying, don't think about it so much. Kettlebell Kevin, hashtag Kettlebell Kevin.
Like, I just want to hit 105 pounds on my birthday. That's like my big stressor with all of this stuff. But
well, you know, and you kind of have an obsession with it. So
I absolutely do.
So maybe you're just like, you know, like just, you know, it's amazing what some people, when if they skipped a day or did something like a different kind of workout and implemented a variety there, then when they go back to the other one, they're actually more energized for that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a reason there's, you know, cross training, and some of the athletes, they don't always do the exact thing that they do in their competition, because there's a benefit to the multi-adaptive components to the various forms of fitness.
Multi-adaptive. Yeah.
But yeah, I think you brought up in this conversation that there's a need for awareness and patience and understanding of the adaptation of the human body, and that your workouts are you're having to always decipher what it is your body wants or doesn't, you know, what it likes, it doesn't like. And as you get older, the resilience factor of the adaptation may not be as quick as when you're like 15 years old, but it's still adaptive. It's just, you've got to read the pace and the method, not give up altogether. You just find something that suits you for where you're at in your life. That's my take.
No, I agree. So so this is not all about me. How would you, if you have a client, or say a patient or somebody or a friend who is approaching fitness, what would your, like, and I know, you know, we could listen to your body, blah, 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 blah. You know, we understand that part, but but sometimes we need to have some concrete kind of advice for someone. What would be like the top 4 tips that you would say to somebody when it comes to introducing, say, if they're going to start, let's be specific about weight training and kind of introduction of weight, choosing your first weight, and then when to know when to progress to the next weight?
Yeah. So if it's, are you talking about weight training as in the gym?
Yeah, we'll just say, well, weight training. Like if someone has a set of weights at home versus a set of weights. Yeah, traditional weights.
Yeah, because functional strength training takes a little bit more awareness, and
you're talking about like CrossFit kind of things.
Yeah, or just using your whole body in different ways. You know, you're not finding a machine and getting on it. you know?
Yeah. So not necessarily machine, although I think machine, there's a component to people using a machine that could make sense, but
Not
machines
your own
make
body
it easier.
weight.
It makes it easier to cheat. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say like a free weight or kettlebell style.
Yeah. So in general, finding, if you've never done weight training and you haven't done anything with heavy weights, personally, I think just to start out with a weight that you can do 15 repetitions so that the last few are challenging towards the end. So not where you can you have to start contorting your whole body to get it up. Mm-hmm. Like it should be a controlled movement. 1 to 2 seconds in each direction is a fairly reasonable thing to consider, because if you start using momentum, here's the key feature here. Your muscle is supposed to control the movement. If you're letting momentum do the movement, your muscle's not benefiting from the movement as much, and actually sets you up for increased risk for injury, especially to the ligaments we've been talking about. Because it's not just there's called what's a concentric, where you're actually contracting the muscle, and eccentric, which is where it's the lengthening of the muscle. And that movement, each movement, the concentric can be 1 to 2 seconds, the eccentric can be 1 to 2 seconds. And the thing that if people go too fast is that shift from the concentric to the eccentric, you can actually create a lot of strain and stress on parts of your body. So that's why a controlled movement. So starting at, if it's a very first time, I would even say 2 sets, but 2 to 3 sets, go into 15 repetitions. Because you're not going to do heavy weight. The heavier the weight you go, usually you lower your repetitions. So 2 to 3 sets, 15 repetitions, slow and controlled. And then usually every few weeks, you can kind of like bump it up. You know, it depends what part of the body it is. Your legs can do more than like your arms. But, you know, usually the plates that are on machines or the next one up on the free weights can be a way to guide you. But if you are if you still feel really sore after a few weeks, be surprised. It's usually that first 2 weeks, you're kind of going through that really rough phase of things are being more sore. Every time you increase, it can be more sore, but 2 to 3 sets, 15 repetitions, slow and controlled movements, increase the weight. It's sometimes psychologically, you have to be ready for it too. Maybe every 3 to 4 weeks. Because it's not like you're a competitor or something like that, and you're on this like time schedule. But I think that's like a safe, good old faithful way of approaching it. And what's interesting as you develop your muscles, you have more awareness. Most people can do if they're right-handed, when they say contract your bicep, you can do it, like you can feel it and sense it. People that don't work their back, they have a real hard time understanding how to contract the back muscles because they've never automatically activated them. So there's this muscle awareness that you gain as you use them more. I'm trying to think of anything else along those lines, but there's more warnings probably of just I hate for people to get injured, and I hate for people to overdo it too fast. But what you're feeling while you're doing things is not necessarily the way you're going to feel a couple days later. So if it's brand new and you're creating repetitions of it, you may just feel a little fatigued that day, but sometimes that soreness becomes very intense later. So just follow the rule of adaptation a little bit at a time. Start low, go slow.
Yeah, I'll just add a personal anecdote to that. I did when I was a senior in high school, I did a lot of weightlifting, and then kind of was on and off and was off for a long time. And the thing, I think, again, over age 35 was like the transition age. Like everything started you drink, and all of a sudden you get hangovers all the time after the age of 35. You start exercising, you get sore all the time after the age of 35. But I would just recommend, from personal experience, not having really, again, I'm not an athletic trainer or anything, but what I've discovered is even when I went in and I was starting something new, and I'm starting something new, I'm going to make this ridiculously simple. And I would do a set of exercise. I wasn't even barely exerting at the end. It was not much. I'm always shocked at how freaking sore I was.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're a new person, and for me, it was like, if you've say weightlifted in the past, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to get back into weightlifting, and it's been like a while, 5-10 years, I would just be saying, yeah, be prepared to be sore no matter what you do. Like it's just kind of, and then I don't know, then you're like me and you get impatient. Like, this is stupid. This weight is so light. Why am I sore?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one other thing to add is that people don't always think of it this way, but you see people all the time that are like jacked and like, worked out and stuff. And you've created a stressor, a repetitive stressor. Your body is trying to be prepared for that next time you do that thing. So your body is creating more tone. So it's going to increase the tone so that you can look more jacked, if you want to call it that. But you tend to if you get really sore, it's like you still have to move through it, and you still have to, and for some people that tend to get more tight, I'm one of those people. It limits my range of motion, my gait, my stride. I can tell that it's not going long enough. Like, work into, basically giving it the opposite information. Get into the range of motion where you stretch those hamstrings if they're super tight, because you've been doing some muscle work that makes them tighter, so that you don't get overly tight in a way that you're not functional. So that's like a little tip that people don't think about that. But for those that tend to have a highly responsive response, I guess, then you might want to consider that, so that you're not completely miserable.
Consider what though? Because remember that again, because I missed you a little bit.
So if you are doing activities that tighten the muscles, which is what doing weights does,
okay, like weight
then
training,
stretch those muscles.
Stretch them after you're done.
After you're done, or even on like a couple minutes goes a long way if you do it with frequency. So a few minutes of stretching a day is look at cats, they do it. They don't even have anyone telling them on a podcast. So, those are just like we don't always pay attention to the cues that our bodies are giving us. So I highly suggest that people do some stretching. It can be dynamic stretching with, kind of taking things in more range. Static stretching is where the whole bouncing thing. Anyway, just gentle stretching is reasonable. Yoga is a way to do it. You can hurt yourself doing yoga if you don't take the principles of adaptation too.
Yeah, and you're doing crazy yoga.
Yeah, don't.
But
simple.
Now you're making me kind of curious. I was like, okay, yeah, cats. Every time they wake up, how
they're amazing.
They do that big old flexion extension thing. So I try to do that's what I need to do. Yeah, like get out of bed and just do like raise your hands up and straighten up, and then kind of crouch back down and curl in. Feels so good. Yeah, I might try that. I might do that. Introduce. I now have to figure out a way to remember that. Call the it's so simple. The rise in the after nap time or after sleep time, add in some cat stretching. You heard it here first, folks, at the Change Position. Cat stretching for health. Yeah. Downward dog is downward kitty too. Because I have a big fan. With that? I enjoyed this episode to share a little bit of some perspective on some simple routines or bodybuilding. And as you get older, women out there, you need to keep your muscle. So even 2 to 3 days a week is a great staple to do some muscle building. And I have to in adding, if you just do a couple exercises, and that's the thing that I think is really discouraging is people start it. I see a lot of older people that don't do any sort of weights at all. And you don't have to go to the gym, and you don't have to do all this stuff where you're, whatever, doing like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Literally, that's what I love about my program. It's 2 exercises. Those 2 exercises hit basically every single muscle group in the body. You're hitting them under kind of this explosion. You're doing it under tension. But you can do that with as simple as walking with weights, gentle squats. But man, introduce some weights. Don't just work up to a can of paint, a full can of paint. That's the poor man's kettlebell. Just get yourself a can of paint, and you can squat with that sucker right between your legs, and people are going to think you're
crazy, but I don't care. I think it's a simple way to get some weight. And yeah, you know, even if you just made a point of doing 20 squats, you know, it could be quarter squats if you can't go all the way down. And it's amazing too, you know, a lot of knee discomforts. You start strengthening your glutes and your quads, and you just help out the whole body do the activity. It's amazing the kind of tension it takes off the rest of your body too when you're more adapted.
And certainly don't fall in the trap of, oh, I'm too old to do this.
Oh,
like
God.
I'm always shocked, like even in the physician groups, like some of these like physician early retirement groups or whatever, like, I'm trying to do all this because before I can't do it. I'm like, what do you mean you can't do it? Walk? Like you can't walk up steps. And like, oh, I'm going to get arthritis. And that one just absolutely drives me crazy, because everybody talks about arthritis being wear and tear. And yet the number one evidence-based modality for arthritic pain is movement. So you're going to tell me that you're getting wear and tear, and that the treatment is more wear and tear? It's like, oh, come on. Like it just,
it's essentially, you're saying, live a life that creates less resilience, because you already prove you potentially might have less resilient situation. Like it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I have some joints you probably could look on x-ray and it says, you know, like my big toe, you know, shows some arthritic stuff. But it's kind of like we talked about when you're young versus you're old. You might have to do the strategy a little bit different, just to kind of like not do it too fast with the strategy, and maybe adapt it more slowly so it doesn't freak out. Like that's, you know, it's you can't stop. You have to always do something. But for you and your situation, you have to do the whatever little baby steps you need to do to get there, not because you can't ever go there. There's a big difference.
Yeah. Just slow down and do it.
Just do it.
just do it. Just do it.
All right, Nike. We just put your big old logo on there.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm just gonna summarize here is start low and go slow. That's sort of a standard thing. Incorporate some sort of weight bearing activity into your day-to-day routine. If you are introducing something brand new, start it with a minimum amount of weight and be prepared to be sore. And that's okay. That's just your body telling you something, that you've done something new. That's a change. Oh, this has changed a lot. Are you sure you want to do this? Yes, I do. And then as you get older, introduce the principle of time, not time that you can't do it, but the fact that when you introduce change, it takes a little bit longer to adapt. So be a little bit slower than you were when you were 18. Does that sound like I summarized it? Okay.
That was perfect.
All right. Yeah, so I will take us out. So thank you all for joining us to the Change Physician. Oddly enough, this was not the episode that we were planning. I can hard to believe that. You can always join us at on most Saturdays for Saturday Salutations for our Facebook Live at The Change Physician, or you can join the community if you're a physician or physician ally at thechangephysician.com. And until next time, stay well.
Take care.